And so in the selling piece, you think about an integrator role or director of operations. And again, bringing up that Colby, where you have a real slow start. Most integrators are going to be a slower start if you're looking at Colby. And, they're not going to come in and think of big ideas. We naturally are trying to optimize, right? Integrations, operations, applications, all of these things. That's
all the shuns.
Hey, Jinx. Are you frustrated by a lack of momentum in your business? Tired of putting in long hours doing what everyone says you should and still not making money? Sounds like you're ready for Lifestyle Builders. We'll help you get back on track, taking action and seeing results. Head over to joinlifestylebuilders.com today to get started. Our next guest has spent 2 decades in the operations industry. She spent much of that in corporate America as a human resources leader and a certified project manager. She left corporate and quickly began filling a gap in the small business market by teaching and mentoring 6- and 7-figure business leaders about the nuances of operations. Her gift is in simplifying complex business strategies to show CEOs how to scale through operations. And she's got a podcast as well. Please welcome Natalie Shafer Gingrich. Hey everyone, we are so excited to have Natalie here with us today. You just heard all the amazing things that she's doing. Natalie, thank you so much for coming on the show with us.
I am totally delighted to be here. Thank y'all so much for asking.
And we are ready for Tom and Natalie to geek out a little bit about, ops and project management and all of that cool stuff, because that is in both of their backgrounds.
Well, I was going to say, and you've had to deal with it for years. So actually,
I know more about it than I probably should.
Yeah, you're probably teaching me about these things now.
All right. So Natalie, you have been in this industry for a while now, and you've swapped over from corporate to the entrepreneur side of things. My biggest question for you is, what has been one of your biggest challenges in bringing ops knowledge into entrepreneurs' businesses?
Oh, I love this question. This is a good one. And I've not ever been asked this. So thanks for jogging my memory here. But I think the hardest part is in corporate, resources are so easy to come by. Right. So the margins are so much bigger, the volumes are bigger, the resources are bigger, the projects are bigger. And so I really had to shift my mentality. I wasn't always really super zoned in on the budgets in corporate because they were so big and there was a lot of discretionary. And then when you move into the small business space and even running in my own business, I mean, the margins are not that big, and we will do a lot to save 1%, right? Mm-hmm. So, to lose 1% in corporate was very, very small. It was not even a big deal. Like no one even blinked at it. And today I would do anything for a client to gain 1% or 2% because I can now see how that translates into a family's income. I can see how that changes a mortgage payment. That's probably the hardest part, is understanding and translating the resource difference.
Yeah, what I found, I'm guessing you probably found it as well. In corporate, everyone understood what project management was. They knew the terms. They knew what it was because everyone was involved in a project, whether it was from actually doing the work or contributing as a stakeholder. And then when we shifted over to entrepreneurs, half of them didn't even know what we were talking about when we said, project management, project manager, integrator, operations. They're like, what are all these terms?
I've been in this role for about 4 years on my own. And I will never forget my very first business coach when we were really trying to identify what it was and how I was going to put together my first package and et cetera. Project management was a scary term. And she kept telling me, you're in a blue ocean. You're in a blue ocean. And I kept thinking, how can I be in a blue ocean? Like this is a foundational practice that every business owner has to have. And even if you don't think you have this muscle, you've flexed it many times to be able to be in the place that you're in today. You probably just didn't the terminology is probably wasn't there for you, but yeah, that's definitely true.
Yeah, I feel like project management for entrepreneurs and small businesses is very much, like you said, it was a blue ocean. It's starting to become more relevant, like more people recognize it. But still, when you talk about it, like you can tell people's eyes kind of like glaze over a little bit and they're like, that sounds like corporate. That sounds like, that sounds like large, big businesses. Why would you tell me about that? Like, I'm a solopreneur. But when you look at the term itself, it really is simplified because all it means is how you manage your projects.
Yep. And everything we do is a project, right? So the things that fill our days. And what really got me into this is when people would come to me and be so overwhelmed. And what pulled my heartstrings and the emotional side of me when I first got into this is how many women, in particular, how many women would give up and would say really derogatory things to themselves. Like, I'll just quit. I'll just go back to corporate. I'm just going to abandon this. I will start something else. And the key driver to all of that is overwhelm, which we're not going to avoid in small business. Like, we are playing so many roles. Overwhelm is just going to happen. But that was the key emotion that I was like, okay, I've got to figure out how to help them. And what drives that overwhelmed, exhausting feeling are too many projects at one time.
Yep.
Too many tasks. So, it's easier to look at it now. And of course, we can always connect the dots looking backwards. But when you look backwards, you say, oh, well, the reason I was so crazy is I had 7 offers, or I had, I was trying to launch 2 things back to back, or, we all have those moments where we're like, ooh, why did we do that?
Well, and I mean, for me, it makes a lot of sense now, of course, because we're years into it. But when we look back, what changed our trajectory as entrepreneurs was when Tom brought project management home.
Can you say that again? I just want to make sure we got it recorded.
But I mean, seriously, look, we think about project management as a business thing. When you look at life, that's what we're all doing constantly. We are managing the projects in our personal lives, with our marriage, with our kids. And when you think about it as, okay, I'm just taking this process that I do, and I'm going to do that in my business too, it makes sense. And then you also have to look at it, like you said, overwhelm comes from too many projects. And so many people were separating their business and their personal as like, oh, these are separate things. Well, no wonder you're overwhelmed, because you're trying to manage projects in your life and manage all the projects in your business as a solopreneur or as somebody with a very small team. Of course, you're going to be overwhelmed. Like, that's a lot of things to manage. So thinking about project management as this one whole integration, like, that's why we brought all of our stuff together, was because it was like, okay, well, now we can manage projects and not forget about all the personal stuff that's going on underneath those projects in the business and burn ourselves out.
Yes, I just recorded a podcast this morning on something very similar about creating an ideal week. And, this is an ideal week, feels very idyllic, obviously. It's not something that we can sustain week in and week out, because our lives are always changing. But one of the things that really reminded me of what you were saying is that I have to know my priorities outside of business, or including business, actually. But like, there are so many different roles that Natalie plays in life. And business is a big part, and I love it. Like, it's easy for me to go super deep here, but my number one role right now is being a mom to my 2 teenagers, and being a wife, and then being able to have some good self-care, which has been really hard for me to insert as an entrepreneur, because, and I will say business owner, I'll come back to that. Don't let me forget. And you guys probably know where I'm going there, but it's honestly one of those things that I can easily put business over my family. And I have many, many times. And there are seasons where that's okay. But as I sit down to do this ideal calendar, as my children are about to go back to school, hallelujah. Yay. Yes. I do love them. And we've had a great summer, but I am really ready to shift my priorities, honestly.
Time.
Yep. So as I'm doing this, I have to really realize what are the priorities in Natalie's life, and then start to plug in places. And then I look and I see what always happens is I look and say, oh, wait, business doesn't have that much. I don't have that much time for my business. So what do I need to shift here? Or do I just need to have a real conversation with myself and say, you know what, this season I'm going to have to hustle less, or I'm going to make less, or what does that look like for me? And then if it's time to shift because I've got a launch coming up, or because I have something else that's going to take greater priority, then that happens.
Yeah.
So I'm curious, when we talk about project management, there is the quote unquote traditional project management, which is Gantt charts and typically longer projects, managing budget, scope, all of that. And then there's also, I would say, these alternative methods like Scrum and Lean and these different lighter weight versions. So, when I was in the corporate world, it started with these big projects, traditional projects. And a lot of the work I did was really shifting more to like Scrum and Lean. What approach have you found taking with entrepreneurs? Is it traditional? Is it a combination? Like, what have you found works best with these small businesses?
We are totally getting nerdy right now.
Absolutely. I told you we would.
So I come from like old school. I'm probably older than you guys. I literally started learning project management through Microsoft Project. So this is a long time ago. So my background, my true training is really in using Gantt charts and waterfalls. Like I love that stuff. And I still find myself like wanting to go back sometimes to just take what's in Trello and just put it in a beautiful Gantt chart, because that's what really, that's what really makes me excited. But I do think that for untraditional project, for people who are not really, who don't understand the science of project management, using things like Scrum or, Lean. I've been through all of Lean Six Sigma. And so I think it's so much more helpful, and it's easier for people to wrap their heads around it in a space where they may not have flexed that muscle ever or knowingly flex that muscle. So I don't find that. I think a Gantt chart is really overwhelming for people, especially visionaries. And I tend to insert myself in people's businesses who are very, very visionary. Mm-hmm. And that's the best compliment that I can give. Just like you guys are such a good, like your synergy is so strong. We were talking before we were recording today, but my husband, y'all have been on my mind because I knew that this was coming up. So I was thinking about you guys and reflecting back in my own life and thinking, goodness gracious, my husband and I could not do what Tom and Ariana do, because we are both very integrator-like. Our Colbys, I don't know if you guys are big Colby fans, but our Colbys are very similar. So that brings its own challenges. But to have a business together, I don't know if that could happen.
So I love the fact that you brought up like the visionary versus integrator type thing, because that's something I don't think a lot of, I would say newer entrepreneurs understand is, what role do they naturally fall in? And even doing things like a Colby assessment to understand what are your natural tendencies. And then as you're starting to grow a team and hire, really which role you fall into and which things you have to delegate. So how have you used that with entrepreneurs or small business owners as you work with them to help them kind of understand like where they should fit and where they shouldn't fit?
So to be honest, at the very beginning, when I was getting started and working one-to-one with clients, I, like anybody else, would take all the clients, right? Because I needed the income. And it's only through exercise and practice that you realize what it is and how you're going to perfect this and get it better and better and leaner. And in doing so, it's now a requirement for me, and in the certification that I have, and I'm certifying other people to do what I do. Colby is it is the backbone of how we come into people's businesses. So if I have Ariana take the Colby assessment and she looks very similar to me, I actually would not tell her to hire a director of operations. I would tell her to look for a project manager or somebody else, maybe not as strategic, because she is going to her Colby profile. I'm making a lot of assumptions, but her Colby profile is probably very close to mine, but she's a controlling personality. I mean, she will be a controlling personality. Any operator, any integrator is, and that's a beautiful thing in a business and in a partnership. Most times. We won't go into all of that, but basically I'm always trying to bring a high quick start. So if you're looking in the Colby, I'm always trying to bring a high quick start and a medium or a low quick start together, because I have seen time and time again when I'm a 3 on quick start. So
Sounds about right.
Yeah, it takes me forever to launch anything. but I tend to work best with a 6 through an 8. So I have worked with Kolbe. I'm certified through Kolbe as well, but I have really tried to understand what they call a right fit for this role. So that's also how I screen people who want to be a director of operations. I actually have them take the Kolbe beforehand so that I know I'm able to say, you know what, Tom, if you're ready for somebody, tell me what your Kolbe is, and I will be able to describe and help you understand what we do, how we think. You're lucky to have an Ariana, so you understand how we think. But a lot of visionaries aren't, and they've never taken the time to slow down, and even they don't slow down, right? They just they press. They're dreamers, they're thinkers, and so taking the time to pause to think, ooh, who do we need next? It's just really, it's a tough thing. And so Kolbe has really helped me to bridge that.
Well, and I mean, to be completely honest, people always talk about like, how do you guys work together without killing each other?
Because we're opposites.
Well, I was going to say, and there was a while where that was a huge challenge. And it wasn't until we started taking assessments like Kolbe and DISC that we realized that we were opposites. And to your point, we then started to say, okay, well, what role do you naturally fit into versus me? And what we saw was that some of the things that we had on our plates weren't a good fit for what we were doing. So at that point, we then started kind of rearranging some of those tasks, and it made a huge difference. So I think a lot of people don't take that time to take those assessments and really realize where they should sit in their business, and then realize who they need to surround themselves with so that they're doing what they're good at and what they enjoy and what comes natural, and then they're supplementing with what doesn't.
Well, and I love that you say that that's a requirement too, because I know for a lot of people, they always come up with that question like, well, how do I hire somebody? Like, oh, if I think I need a project manager, how would I hire that person? And that taking that assessment and like knowing where you're at and then finding out from there, like, okay, if I'm this, I should be hiring that, helps so much because you're bringing those people in and you're specifically looking for people that have an opposite skill set from you so that it's like yin and yang, you fit together well in the business, and they're going to pick up the slack where you just really, that's not your zone of genius.
So this is a little out of bounds, but in today's day and age where you can't ask so many questions in an application, a Kolbe really gives you some intel that we have no control over. I mean, we take that test and it's not like we can fake it. I mean, you're asking some really strange questions, guys. So, that really gives you a profile. And even when I'm hiring for other people, I also like to look at other assessments. Even the Myers-Briggs can be helpful. Enneagram, all of these things can be really helpful. But the Kolbe is always my preferred method because it's how you implement work, how your brain translates an idea to action. And obviously that's where I come into people's businesses. And so it's the key to hiring, to adding, to scaling. And
yeah, I mean, to your point, the thing I love about Kolbe is it's they call it your MO, right? Your modus operandi. It's how you naturally function. So whereas some of the other tests may be more personality based, this one, to your point, cuts through all of that and really gets, down to how you operate.
The thing another thing I love about Kolbe is that it doesn't change. So I took this 10 years ago in corporate. I had it, that was actually one of my last corporate projects, was bringing Kolbe into a 40,000 person business, which was awesome for me because it really was, I was trying to align people to the right jobs, and then also management and explaining, some of the nuances and difficulties in managing people. But
lost that.
Well, I was gonna say, so I want to go back to the entrepreneur versus business owner discussion, because I think this is a critical one that so many people don't realize. And once you have awareness to it, it opens up and makes you really think about the role you play in your business. So tell me more about your thoughts on that.
I was just going to say this a second ago when you were talking about visionary. So those roles between visionary and integrator. And I want to preface this by saying, if you're an integrator, it doesn't mean that you cannot be an entrepreneur. I think you're going to have more challenges in being an entrepreneur, but an entrepreneur doesn't stay in businesses very long, right? They scale businesses very quickly and they're full of ideas. Whereas someone with a Kolbe profile like mine, or someone who is more of an integrator style, I could never consider myself an entrepreneur. I don't just sit around and stew on new ideas. I sit around and stew on how to literally make a business more lean, how to bring in a process, how another person, where the ROI can come from. Like those are the things that I'm looking at. So if you look at, a visionary is very high level. I am still very creative and very much, my brain is just as busy as yours. Like there's not a difference in how busy and active we are. There's a lot of stigma around this, and it doesn't have to be that way because we're equally busy brained. My brain is just looking at the nuances and what I can do to make the business run faster, leaner, make more money. Like that's where I'm worried. That's what I'm thinking about. Whereas a visionary, my complement is thinking of all the new things that we can do. They're thinking of revenue streams, and I'm thinking about the intricacies that I can do in that revenue stream to maximize it, to bring some efficiencies to it so we can make more.
Absolutely. I love the way you phrase that too, because, sometimes I'll explain it that way and people are like, I don't get it. Like, what do you mean? So another way I've explained it sometimes is usually entrepreneurs, business owners come from one of two backgrounds. They're either from a sales background where they're able to explain their ideas, get other people on board. And typically those are the entrepreneurs. They're really good at selling and they do really good at, getting a business going in sales. But when you go to help them on the back end, it usually looks terrible because they don't have an operations focus. Whereas on the flip side, if you have someone that comes from more operations, more project management, they're usually really organized. They got systems, they got everything else, but they often struggle to scale because they're not naturally a salesperson. So knowing which role you fit into, if you then look back at your business, it's probably a really good reflection. So I have like people that are really good at sales that are like so embarrassed when we come in and the back end of the business looks terrible. It's like, look, you're sitting in the seat you're in, and this is the natural consequence because as our businesses grow, things are going to break and get messy. It's just a question of where in the business does that happen.
Right. And so in the selling piece, you think about an integrator role or director of operations. And again, bringing up that Colby, where you have a real slow start. Most integrators are going to be a slower start if you're looking at Colby. And, they're not going to come in and think of big ideas. We naturally are trying to optimize, right? Integrations, operations, applications, all of these things. That's
all the shuns.
Hey, jinx.
But that's what gets us excited. And so, there's really not a right or a wrong way. I know that in my downtime, I'm never thinking about another business. I'm always thinking about how I can make this one run leaner and longer. I do feel like businesses have a shelf life. So
it's kind of funny, like poor Ariana, because naturally I'm a visionary, but because of my career and the work that I've done, I've always taken on roles of helping, visionaries with the integration piece. So one of the things when we were working together, it was like, well, one day Tom's playing this role and the next day he's playing this role. And so once again, like really going back, and I mean, the game changer for us was taking those personality tests and then being super clear on what roles we're each going to play.
Have you always been a leader in your roles, Tom?
Yeah.
So that would be where I would go with this. If you are, and if you can kind of play both of those, you're really masking one. You're probably more of a visionary, but you have a high 100%. Aptitude to understand that. And so you can come in and lead it and hand it off. So that's where your quick start probably comes in.
Yeah. Absolutely. And that's exactly what I have to do. And, it's funny because you can usually tell pretty quickly, does somebody always want to do something new when they're more of that problem solver from the, like, I've got a new idea, or is somebody more of the, like, I want to optimize what I have here. And do I like kind of doing that same type of thing? And then it's usually pretty easy to say which bucket do you sit into.
Which is to bring it back to the original question. That's exactly why I can never call myself an entrepreneur. Like, I'm not going to just be spinning about these things.
Yeah, it's funny because I was filling something out the other day, and we wanted to know like how you wanted to be described in something, and I was like, and it was like business consultants, entrepreneurs, authors, and speakers or something, and I was like,
27 titles,
business consultants. But then it's like when I fill things out, a lot of times I say business owners because we're not. It's like you said, we're not always looking for the new idea. Yes, we have multiple businesses because visionary, but we've kind of learned like when it is time to turn it off. And owning 3 businesses, I'm good. We're not going to add a 4th on top of that. We're going to optimize what we have.
So you think?
No. No more businesses. There are no more children, so you're not allowed to start any more businesses.
That's true.
That's when our last 2 were started. Every time we were pregnant.
Well, and I think this brings up a good point too, because I mean, a big part of starting a business is understanding how you want it to play into your life. You were talking earlier about really looking at, personal goals and business goals. And then, at the end of the day, we only have so much time. So one of the things that we've always been intentional about is like, where does this business fit into what we're ultimately trying to do? And then, to your point, it might be, well, some people really like starting a business, growing it, and then selling it. One of the things we realize is that we like starting a business, growing it, but then we really just want to put a team in place to help us manage it. So, in like our first 2 businesses, people are often surprised that we're not like physically at our wine and liquor store. We're able to build these things so that we get the benefits of owning it without necessarily having to do that role, because I would die if I was in that role.
Yes. So this jogged my memory on something. I oftentimes ask people when I'm getting into their business, because I don't know these people, right? Like I may have the, benefit of having stalked them on Facebook or stalked them in their own little journeys. But a lot of times they're people that I don't know, which is great. But one of the first questions after we kind of get in, I'm a big mission, vision, and values, like thinking back to a true project management. It's like, as I'm gathering the scope, I really have to understand where my boundaries are, and vision is what allows me to do that. But I will ask them, is this a lifestyle business, or are we trying to sell this business? Because there are 2 completely, I have to make sure that their vision actually addresses that, and then their time management, which I'm not ultimately responsible for how they spend their day-to-day minutes, but I do care about how we are purposing the team's time to achieve that goal. And for me, again, another non-entrepreneurial label that I will give myself is I don't want to make $1 million, because I know when I look at that ideal week, I don't have enough hours in my day to build that, right? And that's just not a desire of mine. If I can live comfortably, I'm save for retirement, do what I need to do. The same things that I was doing in corporate satisfy me, right? And of course, the lure of making a lot of money and of course, I get it. If I was blessed that way, I'd be all over it. But I'm not in this to charge to build, and so it leads me to build my own business in a very different way than for the people that I have supported that are like, you know what, we're going to drive this for 5 years. We're going to get this to X million. We're going to turn it over to a broker. We're going to sell it for X million, and your job is done. So it completely will align or realign how you spend your money, your time, and your people.
I think that's a great thing to point out too, because a lot of people don't think about that, especially if they're just getting started, like you said, as a project manager, and they're like, I'm going to take whatever clients come to me. You want to make sure that you're aligned and that you're aware of what that client's mission is, because that ultimately allows you to do your job better and get better at what you do and help people more. So I love that you brought up that clarification.
Well, and even you helping them clarify that, because that's something, I mean, we're huge on it too. Like literally the first thing we do with people is have them lay out their mission and their vision, and we do it for their personal life, because until we know what that looks like, we don't know if we're building the right business, or we don't know if we're building it in the right way. We don't know what we're going towards. And, we found that has made such a big difference, because, there'll be people that say like, yeah, I want a $10 million business. I'm like, do you understand what a $10 million business looks like? Yeah. And it's not to say it's a bad thing, but does that align and support the lifestyle you're looking for? And for most people, when we end up kind of going through some of these activities, they realize they actually want a much smaller business, and we can then intentionally design and build a business that way. Whereas most people just throw out a number and they have no idea what it's actually going to mean to their life.
Yeah. Before we let you go too, I want to jump in and talk about your certification, because I think that is so amazing that you're taking all of that knowledge and you're helping other people who want to become project managers get certified and learn how to do this in the right way to best serve their clients. So talk to us about your certification and, how did that come about?
I love this conversation. So I mean, we could stay on here way too long, like your listeners would be tapped out, but we could talk for a long time. So I do have that ability, that salesmanship skill, if you look at strength finders, woo is my number one. So I have always had the gift of being able to sell and, the charisma to be able to be in front of people. And so as I was coming into this space, and I was coming in late, quote unquote, because I was a little bit older. And so I knew I had to scale this really, really quickly because I was substituting a big income from corporate. So when I came into this space and started to realize, oh, there's events and all this other stuff, I started to get on the road. I attended a few, and then, of course, I was total high achiever. I'm like, I'm going to be on that stage. I'm going to be on that stage. So I did so, and I would get off the stage and people would say, I need a Natalie. But a Natalie only has, or an operations person, if you're serving a client, and I love client work, but if you're serving one-to-one clients, you're probably not going to be able to serve more than 3 to 5 very well. Mm-hmm. So, I mean, again, we're tapped out on time. I understand my priorities. And so I'm a slow start. So I spent a long time thinking of how I could multiply this. And the very first thing that came up, which a lot of people think of, is, start an agency, get a lot of people to do what you do and delegate work. And I really wanted to do that. And then I remembered that I have two highly competitive athletic children that I drive 17 hours a week to activities. So I think about the responsibility of the 3 businesses that I was supporting. And if I multiplied that and was the spokesperson and the liaison, it would just be too much. And I don't think I would be able to show up for either party in the way that I wanted to. So it was a hard decision because I think ultimately I could have made a lot more money to do that. And so I had to get really, really grounded and rooted in what my goal is. One thing I will say here, you guys were talking about what you guys do as how this fits in from a mission, from a family perspective. My husband and I, as we were having our first child, have a mission of raising great 30-year-olds. And we say this to ourselves all the time, whether it's going on vacation or making an investment in something or, whatever that may be. We're like, how does this play into a good 30-year-old? So just wanted to loop that back in. So but the agency would not allow me to build a great 30-year-old, right? Because I would be absent from it. So then I really started dreaming and scheming and thinking, and the certification, which felt very imposter-like, right? Like train little mini Natalies, like that sounds gross to me. Well, so I spent one whole year in documenting how I work with clients, literally it's a framework. I didn't know I was building framework at the time, but that's what I deduced from this. I mean, every single client meeting, I would just build, SOPs and nerdy things, create templates for projects that I was working on. And really it turned into something that I was like, okay, I'll bring in one person and I will have them do this. And then I was like, well, why would I do this for one person? Because so many people need this. And people were coming to me that I would meet at conferences or online or however, they would come to me and they'd say, do you have anybody that you would recommend? And so I was recommending people that I was friendly with them, but I really had no idea what their work ethic looked like. I didn't know project management. You can be a project manager without ever getting a PMP. And I don't necessarily think that that's a requirement at all to be a great project manager. But so anyway, I put together this curriculum and now I'm bringing people through, which really, it serves them. They come out, they have some very specific licensed frameworks that they can use on their clients and make their return really quickly. But on the flip side, if they're looking for clients and you guys come to me and you're ready for somebody, I'm able to talk to you and help you to understand what this role is. I know the personality, I know the role, I know the pricing. I can do some of this really hard woo and sales stuff that my integrators typically aren't great at. They're not salespeople. By and large, they're not salesy people. There's not a lot of extroverts, honestly, who play the operations role. So I'm able to do that and be a bridge. And then also what they're ultimately wanting, which is what all of us want, is revenue and to do things that are easy for us and that we're really passionate about. And so I'm able to be that bridge and bring them together. And it's been a really fun journey. It's one that I hope I'm just starting because it feels really good. And it feels good on both sides. Yeah.
Well, I was gonna say just 2 things I'll call out, and then I'll let Ariana chat because otherwise we jam it all day. First off, for everyone listening, go back and listen to just that thought process that Natalie went through, because one of the things we find often is that people design the wrong business. And like you said, you could have gone with an agency which would have looked very different. The financials will look different. Your time commitment will look different. And that's an option for some people if it meets their goals. What you realized was that that didn't fit. So you looked at an alternative model. So just realize that even with your skill set, there's different business models that can really work for you. And then second, the second thing I really like about what you're doing is that pairing up and being able to recommend somebody because you understand the framework they've gone through because you've taken them through a very specific one. So I think there's a lot of value that people can get from that, one, in designing your business right. Two, like you said, even in documenting your process, because oftentimes we don't realize how critical the stuff that comes second nature to us, most people don't realize, and how beneficial that can be. And then third, being able to make sure that people are meeting a certain minimum criteria before you then are that connector or that referral. So love that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I did have to make sure. Sorry.
You go ahead.
I did have to make sure when I was setting this up that it was, it's not a course. I have screening requirements at the front end. So when you're legally setting up a certification, you have to have criteria on the front end or the back end or both. And so it was important for me just ethically to make sure that I had that criteria up front. So if they don't fit that Kolbe profile, I have to tell them no. If they don't have at least 2 years of experience, I do have to tell them no. And of course I don't like that, but it only helps me to have a better brand longer, and it's helping them. They can still continue to do what they do and be a project manager, but I really don't have the confidence in myself to put somebody in front of, to pair them later on. So it's really, it does feel super easy for me to be able to do this and super difficult for them. So I'm bridging a gap for them as well as the business owner.
Yeah, I love it. All right. So we covered a lot of ground today. I would love to hear from you. If someone were to listen to this episode and just take one thing away, what would you tell them to take away from today's episode?
The most important thing, I feel, the foundation of all business starts with that mission, vision, and values. And without it, you're going to have a really, really hard time feeling, quote unquote, in the zone or using your zone of genius or, whatever you're going to call it. But if you're not grounded in what you want, it's going to be really hard. And even if what you want is money, that's okay. Mm-hmm. You just have to really be honest with what it is and know what you're going to have to do to earn that. Because as soon as you start to feel unsuccessful, and we're all going to have failures. And I actually don't dislike failure like most people, but yes, it's going to hurt, but I want to see you succeed longer. And the way that you're going to succeed is being really honest with yourself. And there's so much work and so much depth that goes into that one statement there, but knowing where your mission and more importantly, where your vision is, it can dictate everything.
Yeah. Sounds like this guy over here.
just nodding.
All right. And so obviously we're going to have people listening to this from all different walks of business, I guess walks of life, walks of business. If someone is interested in connecting with you or finding out more about your certification for project managers and director of operations, what is the best link where they can find you?
So my website is theopsauthority.com. And then I am most active on Facebook. I'm over 40, so those are where my people are. So if you can find me on any platform at the Ops Authority.
I love it. Thank you so much for coming on today. Like you said, I feel like we could have totally gone a lot longer.
Yes.
So apparently we're going to have to just have a separate coffee chat today.
Yes.
But thank you so much for coming on and sharing your story and some of your knowledge with us today.
Thanks you guys for all your great work. I've been watching you guys for many, many years, and I love the connection that we've had, albeit several states and thousands of miles away. I just love the connection that I've been able to have with you guys as you have built your business, because of we probably have very similar core values. And so it's a pleasure to be here today.
Absolutely. And for everyone listening, I want you guys to remember that it's your life, your business, your way. We'll see you next time.
Bye. Hey, we hope you enjoyed this episode. If you know another entrepreneur who may benefit from hearing this show, we would so appreciate you being a good friend and sharing it with them. Are you dreaming of a life of financial freedom and more time to spend with your loved ones? Want to build your business to support that dream? You need Lifestyle Builders. a mentorship program designed to meet you where you are and give you strategic and custom guidance so you can build the business you need for the life you crave. Become a lifestyle builder at joinlifestylebuilders.com. Are you a Lifestyle Builders podcast fan? We'd love to hear from you. Head on over to tomandariana.com/iTunes and leave us a review.